Greetings and welcome to our 2020 New McKendree Church Family Newsletter. Folks, I can't wait for the opportunity to finally gather this weekend with my church family for worship. You know, it's crazy to think that March 15th was the last time we were able to worship under the same roof. That's 3.5 months, 15 worship services confined to the internet. Although I thank God for the technology and thank God for the talented folks who've worked so hard to make the past 15 weeks of internet worship a reality, I'm even more thankful that beginning in just a few days, appropriately on Independence Day weekend, we'll finally be free to worship together under the same roof. You know, in the midst of preparing for this weekend's reunion worship, I've also been doing a good bit of prayerful reflection. Specifically, prayerfully reflecting on how well our church family has managed to not just survive this strange, unprecedented season, but actually thrive. What's more, I can't help but be reminded all over again that while our loving Father doesn't cause our lives inevitable challenges, global pandemics or otherwise, He definitely has a way of using those challenging times to mold us, shape us, and grow us. I say that because that's certainly what our God has done in and among us, His New McKendree family. Although no one in their right mind could have anticipated, let alone planned for the COVID pandemic, our God wasn't the least bit surprised, dazed, or confused by any of it. We were, but not our God. Even though none of us, least of all yours truly, had the experience, wisdom, or leadership skill to navigate these uncharted waters, God's grace once again proved to be more than sufficient. Like Paul wrote to his Corinthian parishioners, God's power works best in weakness. And thanks to what we've been through over the past 3.5 months, I think I'm beginning to know what Paul meant when he went on to tell his Corinth church family, "So now I'm glad to boast about my weakness, so that the power of Christ can work through me. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Or as it applies to us, when we're dazed, confused, and stressed out about how to do church and be a church during a global pandemic quarantine, we should rejoice and be thankful. Why? Because when we're at our weakest, God's power carries us and shines through us and makes us strong. From where I sit, our New McKendree family is living proof of that biblical truth. So, as we gather this weekend, let's celebrate with grateful hearts. Celebrate our God, whose love and grace has once again proved to be more than sufficient to carry us and grow us through this incredibly challenging season. And speaking of worship, like everything else in our lives since the COVID invasion, it's going to be a bit different. Great to be sure, but different. For starters, like most churches of our size, we strongly recommend that you sign up in advance for worship service, the worship service you're planning to attend. And I know it's weird, but what's not weird nowadays? Nonetheless, as a means of caring for one another, it's necessary for a couple of reasons. First, in order to maintain social distancing, we need to spread out the seating in such a way that families are 6 feet apart from one another. Obviously, that limits the number of folks we can accommodate at any one service. Pre-registering attendance up to a predetermined number of attendees helps us arrange the seating prior to each worship service. And secondly, and probably most importantly, should someone attend worship who, say later in the following week, ends up testing positive for COVID, we need to account for everyone who may have been exposed so that the appropriate notifications can be made. The only way for us to do that is to know by name each family who attended this service. Therefore, even if you don't pre-register for service, we'll ask you to sign in prior to entering the worship center. And one of our hospitality team members will walk you through the process upon arrival. Again, if that's what it takes for us to worship together while doing all we can to care for and protect one another, then so be it. It's more than worth it. And the same goes for masks. We strongly recommend that you wear a mask while at worship. If you don't have a mask, then no worries, we'll provide you with one. And although I realize that many of you may not wear a mask when you're out and about throughout the week, during worship, we'll be together doing what Methodists do during worship, namely singing. So please wear a mask. Not so much for your own protection, but for the protection and the comfort of those around you. Think of it as a means of loving your neighbor. And as one who has grown to hate wearing those things, the love your neighbor motivation, it tends to work for me. And maybe it will for you as well. Finally, I'm aware that there are many in our church family who, for very good reason, will not want to risk the exposure of attending worship. And please know that I respect and I support your decision. Additionally, I realize that this weekend will be difficult and more than a little bittersweet for those who dearly love their church and long to be in worship with their church family, especially on this first Sunday back. But via the internet and the radio, we can still worship together. Debuting this Sunday, we'll be live streaming our 10:30 worship service. To worship with us live in real time, join us on Facebook or YouTube at 10:30 a.m. We'll also be recording our 5 p.m. worship service and replaying it at 9 a.m. Sunday morning via Facebook, on YouTube, and on our New McHenry website. For our radio patrons, an audio recording of our 5 p.m. service will be aired Sunday morning at 10:30 on AM 1170 and FM 101.9. Church family, like you, I'm excited and more than ready for us to get back together under the same roof to worship and celebrate our God who's carried us through 3.5 months of being apart. But just like the Nehemiah text we'll be talking about this weekend, our return from COVID exile is by no means the finish line. Rather, it's the starting line. The beginning of working together as a united family to not just rebuild what we once had, but empowered by God's more than sufficient grace to begin a new and exciting season of loving God, loving one another, and sharing the light of God's love with our world that needs it now more than ever. So remember, God's still got this. So keep on looking up, and we'll see you in worship.